The Cursed Engagement Ring. In the heart of Springfield, a small, seemingly ordinary town, a sinister tale began to unfold. It all started with a CraigsList ad posted by a heartbroken woman named Marge. She had been left at the altar by her fiancé, Homer, who had run off with a mysterious woman named Maggie. With tears in her eyes and anger in her heart, she decided to part with the engagement ring that had once symbolized her dreams of happiness. Marge, desperate to rid herself of the painful memories attached to the ring, decided to sell it online. She posted the ad with a heavy heart, hoping to find a buyer who would take the cursed token off her hands. Little did she know that this decision would set in motion a series of events that would forever change her life. Among the interested buyers, there was a man named Bart who caught her attention. He claimed to be searching for the perfect ring to propose to his girlfriend, Lisa. They exchanged messages and agreed on a price, planning to meet in a quiet, dimly lit park on the outskirts of Springfield. The day of the meeting arrived, and Marge's heart raced with anticipation as she drove to the park. She clutched the ring tightly in her hand, ready to be rid of it forever. The park seemed eerily empty when she arrived, and the sun was setting, casting long shadows that danced ominously among the trees. As Marge waited on a weathered bench, she received a text from Bart. He had called off the meeting, citing unforeseen circumstances. Disappointed and frustrated, Marge reluctantly decided to return home with the cursed ring still in her possession. That evening, as she sat alone in her dimly lit living room, a sense of unease washed over her. The ring sat on the coffee table, glinting malevolently in the dim light. Marge couldn't help but feel that there was something not quite right about it. She reached out to touch it, and a sudden chill ran down her spine. Sleep came fitfully that night for Marge. She dreamed of a shadowy figure lurking in the darkness, whispering her name with a sinister hiss. She awoke in a cold sweat, convinced that her mind was playing tricks on her. But as she glanced at the ring, it seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy. Days turned into weeks, and Marge's life began to unravel. She would often hear whispers and faint footsteps in her empty house, and shadows seemed to move of their own accord. Objects would disappear only to reappear in inexplicable places, and a feeling of dread settled over her like a shroud. Desperate for answers, Marge decided to confide in her sister, Selma, who was known for her interest in the supernatural. Selma listened intently to Marge's tale of woe, her brow furrowed in concern. She had heard of cursed objects before, but the idea of an engagement ring bearing a malevolent spirit seemed almost too absurd to believe. Together, they embarked on a quest to uncover the truth behind the ring's dark power. They scoured local libraries and consulted experts in paranormal phenomena, but all their efforts led to dead ends. It was as if the ring itself had cloaked its origins in darkness. In their desperation, Marge and Selma reached out to Lisa, the would-be recipient of the ring. Lisa was skeptical, but agreed to meet them. As they gathered in Marge's living room, the atmosphere grew heavy with tension. The cursed ring lay on the table between them, a silent witness to the unfolding horror. Lisa hesitated before reaching out to touch the ring. As her fingers brushed against its cold metal, a shiver ran through her body. Suddenly, her eyes widened with a look of terror. She began to speak in a voice not her own, a voice filled with anguish and despair. "The ring, it hungers for souls," the voice whispered, chilling the room. "It craves the love that was stolen from it. It will not rest until it devours all who possess it." Marge and Selma exchanged horrified glances, realizing that they had unwittingly unleashed a malevolent force into their lives. They knew they had to find a way to break the curse before it consumed them all. As they delved deeper into the ring's dark history, they uncovered a chilling tale of a jilted lover who had been wronged and cast aside. The ring had become a vessel for his vengeful spirit, seeking to exact retribution on the living for the love he had lost. With the help of a local paranormal investigator named Maggie, the trio embarked on a dangerous mission to rid themselves of the cursed engagement ring. They journeyed to the abandoned chapel where Marge had been left at the altar, hoping to confront the vengeful spirit once and for all. Inside the decaying chapel, they found themselves in a nightmarish realm of shadows and whispers. The air was thick with malevolence, and the ring's power surged around them. They had to act quickly. Maggie began to recite an ancient incantation, calling upon the forces of light to banish the vengeful spirit. As she chanted, the ring emitted a deafening scream, and the chapel's walls seemed to close in on them. But they stood their ground, determined to break the curse. With a blinding flash of light, the spirit was vanquished, and the ring fell to the ground, devoid of its sinister power. Marge, Selma, Lisa, and Maggie breathed a collective sigh of relief, knowing that they had put an end to the curse that had haunted them for so long. As they left the chapel, the sun broke through the clouds, casting its warm rays upon them. The town of Springfield felt different, as if a darkness had been lifted. Marge, Selma, and Lisa knew that they could finally move on with their lives, leaving the cursed engagement ring and its malevolent spirit far behind them. But as they drove away from the chapel, a sense of unease lingered in the air. They couldn't help but wonder if the curse had truly been broken, or if the vengeful spirit still lurked in the shadows, biding its time, waiting for the next unsuspecting victim to cross its path. The cursed engagement ring had left its mark on their lives, and the town of Springfield would never be the same again. The sinister tale had come to an end, but its echoes would haunt them for years to come, a chilling reminder of the darkness that could lurk in the most unexpected places. The home that was not up for rent. In the quiet town of Cedarbrook, nestled deep within the heart of the Appalachian Mountains, there stood a charming house with a history as dark as the ancient woods that surrounded it. The locals whispered tales of its previous owners, tales of secrets, and a tragic disappearance that still haunted the town's collective memory. The house was an imposing two-story Victorian mansion, its peeling paint and overgrown ivy only adding to its eerie odor. This was a place where the shadows played tricks on the mind, where the howling winds carried whispers of long-forgotten mysteries. At the center of our story were two main characters, Sarah and David, a young couple drawn to the house by a mysterious CraigsList listing. Sarah was an artist with an insatiable curiosity, and David, an analytical engineer who rarely believed in the supernatural. The listing, titled Enchanted Victorian Retreat, had caught their attention with promises of an affordable rental and the promise of solitude. Step 1. The CraigsList ad. It was a chilly autumn evening when Sarah stumbled upon the CraigsList ad. The ad featured a series of captivating photographs showcasing the house's eerie charm. The price was unbelievably low for such a grand mansion, making it too tempting to ignore. Without much hesitation, Sarah sent a message to the listed email address, inquiring about the property. Step 2. The response. Within hours, Sarah received a reply from an anonymous sender. The email was cryptic and filled with strange, archaic language. It read, "Dear seekers of solitude, your yearning for enchantment has been heard. Visit the address tonight at the stroke of midnight, and the house shall reveal its secrets." Sarah and David were intrigued, but also wary. They couldn't resist the allure of adventure, so they decided to visit the house that very night. Step 3. The midnight visit. As the witching hour approached, Sarah and David made their way to the old mansion. The air was thick with an unnatural chill, and the moon hung low in the sky, casting long, eerie shadows. They arrived at the house, and the front gate creaked open, seemingly of its own accord. Step 4. The haunting welcome. The couple cautiously stepped inside, their footsteps echoing through the grand foyer. The house was cold, and an unsettling silence enveloped them. Sarah couldn't help but feel a strange energy in the air, while David dismissed it as mere superstition. They explored the mansion room by room, each more hauntingly beautiful than the last, until they reached the attic. Step 5. The forbidden attic. The attic door was heavy, and as David pushed it open, a chilling draft rushed out, extinguishing their candles. Inside, they discovered a room filled with dusty relics and ancient tomes. Among them was a diary, its pages filled with the mad scribblings of a previous occupant. The diary spoke of dark rituals and an otherworldly presence within the house. Step 6. The unseen presence. Terrified, Sarah and David decided to leave, but as they descended the staircase, they heard faint, ghostly whispers that seemed to come from all directions. The house felt alive, and they were no longer alone. Shadows danced on the walls, and the portraits lining the hallway seemed to watch their every move. Step 7. The desperate escape. Panic set in as they reached the front door, only to find it locked, with no sign of the key. They were trapped, and the whispers grew louder, mocking and taunting them. David frantically searched for an escape route, while Sarah, her artistic intuition heightened, began to paint a strange symbol on the wall. Step 8. The malevolent force. As the symbol took shape, a malevolent force descended upon them. The temperature dropped further, and the walls seemed to close in. The house itself fought to keep them inside. David finally found a hidden passage that led to the basement, and they made a run for it. Step 9. The final confrontation. In the basement, they discovered a hidden chamber filled with ancient artifacts. At the center of the room stood a cryptic altar, and as they approached, a spectral figure materialized. It was the spirit of the previous owner, a tortured soul bound to the house by dark forces. Step 10. The escape. With the spirit's help, they broke the curse that had ensnared the mansion and set it free. In gratitude, the spirit guided them to a hidden escape tunnel, and they emerged outside, gasping for breath as dawn broke. The mansion crumbled behind them, vanishing into the ethereal mist. Step 11. The aftermath. Sarah and David never spoke of that night again, and the CraigsList listing disappeared without a trace. The town of Sidarbrook continued to hold its secrets, but the couple knew they had encountered a supernatural force that was beyond their comprehension. And so, the Victorian mansion of Sidarbrook remained untouched, its dark history hidden from the world. A house that was not up for rent, but rather a vessel for the supernatural, waiting for the next curious soul to stumble upon its secrets. In the end, some mysteries are best left unsolved, and some houses are better left unexplored, for there are places in this world where the line between the living and the dead blurs, and where darkness waits to claim the unwary. The haunting of Springfield's CraigsList. In the quaint town of Springfield, nestled amidst the rolling hills and picturesque landscapes, there lived a man named Homer. Homer was known throughout town for his eccentric CraigsList listings. He had an old, weathered entertainment center that had seen better days, and he decided it was time to part ways with it. Little did he know that this seemingly mundane act of selling furniture on CraigsList would plunge him and his family into a spine-tingling nightmare that would haunt them for years to come. One sunny afternoon, as the golden rays of the sun kissed Springfield, Homer decided to list his entertainment center online. He described it as a piece with character, perfect for anyone seeking a touch of nostalgia in their home. Homer didn't expect much interest, but soon, an inquiry came in. It was from a woman named Marge, who expressed a keen interest in his entertainment center. Marge's email was polite and straightforward, and she inquired if she could come and take a look at the piece. Homer agreed and provided his address. He was pleasantly surprised when Marge replied, saying she'd be coming with her family to examine the furniture. The appointed day arrived, and Homer felt a sense of anticipation mixed with trepidation. He stood on his porch, waiting for Marge and her family. To his surprise, a dilapidated, rusted station wagon pulled up in front of his house. Out stepped Marge, a tall woman with a pleasant demeanor, but Homer couldn't help but notice the 5 others who accompanied her. There was a man who looked like her husband, and 3 children who seemed to be of varying ages, including a teenage boy who stood out with his sullen expression. Homer tried to be accommodating and invited them in. Marge insisted that all 5 of them needed to see the entertainment center before making a decision. He found it odd but led them into his living room, where the entertainment center stood. a relic from a bygone era. As Marge and her family inspected the piece, Homer couldn't help but feel uneasy. They whispered among themselves, occasionally casting suspicious glances in his direction. The atmosphere grew heavy, and Homer couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. Finally, Marge turned to Homer and said, "We need a few more minutes to discuss it amongst ourselves. Do you mind if we step outside for a moment?" Homer nodded, grateful for a brief respite from the awkward situation. He watched as they filed out of his living room and into the front yard. Just as he was beginning to relax, he heard a disturbing sound from outside. It was the unmistakable sound of someone urinating. He rushed to the window and saw one of Marge's family members, the teenage boy, relieving himself in his driveway. Homer was taken aback and shouted, "Hey, what are you doing?" The boy zipped up his pants and flashed a malevolent grin at Homer before rejoining his family. They returned to the living room, seemingly unperturbed by the incident. An uneasy silence settled over the room as Homer contemplated how to handle this bizarre situation. Just then, the youngest child, a girl named Lisa, pointed at the entertainment center and said, "We want it. We'll take it right now." Relieved to finally be rid of this peculiar family, Homer agreed to sell the entertainment center to them. Marge handed him a wad of cash, and they quickly loaded the furniture into their beat-up station wagon. As they pulled away, Homer couldn't help but wonder what he had just experienced. He watched them drive off, relieved that they were gone but disturbed by the strangeness of it all. He thought it was over, but little did he know that this encounter was just the beginning of a nightmare he and his family could never have imagined. That night, as darkness enveloped Springfield, a chilling unease settled over Homer and his family. Strange occurrences began to plague their home. The television in the living room would turn on by itself, playing eerie static that seemed to form shadowy figures on the screen. Unexplained footsteps echoed through the hallways at odd hours, and whispers filled the air, always just beyond comprehension. Homer, desperate for answers, decided to confide in his neighbor, Meggie, who was known in town for her interest in the supernatural. Meggie had studied the occult for years and had a reputation as a medium. Homer recounted the bizarre encounter with Marge and her family and the eerie events that had followed. Meggie listened intently and agreed to help the family uncover the truth behind the haunting. One stormy evening, Meggie, Homer, and his wife, Selma, gathered in the dimly lit living room. Meggie had brought with her an array of candles, crystals, and a worn Ouija board. She believed that the strange family had brought malevolent spirits into their home, and they needed to communicate with them to find a resolution. As the three of them sat in a circle, their trembling hands rested on the planchette of the Ouija board. Meggie began to ask questions, attempting to make contact with the spirits that seemed to linger in the house. The planchette slowly moved, spelling out cryptic messages that sent shivers down their spines. "Who are you?" Meggie asked. The planchette moved to spell out, "We are the ones who watch." "What do you want?" Selma whispered, her voice quivering. The response was chilling. "We want what was taken from us." Homer's mind raced, trying to make sense of the message. What had been taken from these vengeful spirits, and how were Marge and her family connected to them? The answers remained elusive, and the atmosphere in the room grew heavier. Meggie, determined to uncover the truth, continued to communicate with the spirits. They revealed a horrifying story of betrayal and a curse that had bound them to the entertainment center. It turned out that Marge and her family had stolen the piece of furniture from a cursed estate sale in a neighboring town, unwittingly unleashing the malevolent spirits that had haunted their lives ever since. The spirits demanded that the entertainment center be returned to its rightful place to break the curse. Homer, Selma, and Meggie had no choice but to embark on a perilous journey to retrieve the cursed furniture and end the nightmare that had taken hold of their lives. The following day, armed with information from the spirits, the trio set out on a quest to track down Marge and her family. They were determined to recover the entertainment center and put an end to the terrifying haunting that had plagued their home. Their search took them to the nearby town where Marge and her family had originally stolen the cursed furniture. The town was eerily deserted, with overgrown lawns and dilapidated houses. As they ventured deeper into the town, they came across a foreboding mansion that seemed to radiate an ominous presence. Homer, Selma, and Meddy cautiously entered the mansion, their hearts pounding in their chests. Inside, they discovered a room filled with old, dusty antiques, including the very same entertainment center they had been searching for. It was as if the cursed piece of furniture had been waiting for them all along. But just as they were about to retrieve it, they heard a creaking sound from the shadows. Marge and her family emerged from the darkness, their faces twisted with malevolence. "You shouldn't have come here," Marge hissed, her eyes filled with a sinister glow. A bone-chilling battle ensued as Homer, Selma, and Meggie fought to reclaim the cursed entertainment center. The room seemed to come alive with spectral apparitions, and the malevolent spirits that had been bound to the furniture swirled around them, their presence growing stronger and more malevolent by the second. In a desperate bid, Meggie invoked a powerful incantation she had learned in her years of studying the occult. The room shook, and a blinding light engulfed them. When the light finally dissipated, Marge and her family had vanished, and the cursed entertainment center had been returned to its rightful place. With the curse broken, the malevolent spirits dissipated into the ether, leaving the mansion and Springfield forever. Homer, Selma, and Meggie emerged from the ordeal exhausted but victorious, having put an end to the terrifying haunting that had consumed their lives. The town of Springfield could finally return to its peaceful, idyllic existence, and the family's CraigsList nightmare was but a harrowing memory. The entertainment center remained in the mansion, its dark history now buried, and its curse averted. But Homer, Selma, and Meggie would forever carry the scars of their encounter with the supernatural. They had learned that beneath the surface of a seemingly normal CraigsList transaction could lurk unimaginable horrors, and that sometimes the most ordinary things could become instruments of terror in the hands of those who sought to disrupt the natural order of the world. As the years passed, the story of the haunted CraigsList transaction became a chilling legend in Springfield, a cautionary tale for those who dared to delve into the unknown world of online classifieds. And for Homer, Selma, and Meggie, it would forever serve as a reminder of the darkness that could lurk in the most unexpected places, waiting to ensnare the unwary. The Keurig Roasting Roaches. Chapter 1. A CraigsList Bargain. In the quiet suburban town of Willowbrook, nestled amid a dense forest, lived a young woman named Emma. She was an avid coffee lover and had been contemplating getting a new coffee maker for some time. One evening, while browsing the depths of CraigsList for a good deal, she stumbled upon an enticing ad. The listing was for a Keurig coffee maker, almost brand new, being sold at an unbelievably low price. Intrigued, she reached out to the seller, a person named Alan. Alan responded quickly, and despite the odd-sounding email address, coffeesupply99@gmail.com, he seemed friendly and eager to make the sale. They agreed to meet at an old, run-down house on the outskirts of town the next evening. Chapter 2. A Mysterious Transaction. As Emma drove through the dark, winding roads leading to the decrepit house, a sense of unease washed over her. The house looked abandoned, shrouded in eerie silence, with overgrown weeds and cracked windows. She parked her car cautiously and approached the door. Alan, a middle-aged man with a shifty demeanor, greeted her with a fake smile. They stepped into the dimly lit living room, and Emma noticed the coffee maker on a dusty table. It did look almost new, just as described in the ad. Alan explained that he was moving out of town and needed to get rid of it quickly. Emma, tempted by the low price and desperate to get back home, handed over the cash and left with the Keurig. Chapter 3. A Strange Start. Back at her cozy home, Emma unpacked her new purchase with excitement. She eagerly brewed her first cup of coffee, relishing the aroma that filled her kitchen. But as she took the first sip, a gritty texture assaulted her taste buds. She glanced into the cup, and to her horror, discovered coffee grounds swimming amidst the liquid. Strange, she muttered to herself, convinced that Alan must have left some residue in the machine. She cleaned it thoroughly and brewed another cup, hoping for a better result. This time, the coffee was perfect. Chapter 4. An unwelcome guest. Days passed, and Emma reveled in her new coffee maker, making her morning ritual more enjoyable than ever. But as the week went on, something unusual began happening. She noticed tiny black specks in her coffee cup once again. At first, she dismissed them as random debris, but they kept reappearing. One evening, while preparing dinner, she heard an odd rustling sound coming from the direction of the Keurig. She walked over and gasped in horror as a cockroach scurried out from the machine's crevices. She shrieked and immediately called her friend Sarah. Chapter 5. Sarah's visit. Sarah, a close friend and fellow coffee enthusiast, arrived promptly at Emma's doorstep. Emma explained the bizarre events that had been unfolding since she brought the Keurig home. Sarah inspected the machine and couldn't believe her eyes when she found cockroach droppings inside it. "This is insane, Emma. How did these creatures get inside a sealed coffee maker?" Sarah wondered aloud, her voice trembling with disbelief. The two friends decided to disassemble the Keurig to investigate further. As they removed the back panel, their stomachs churned at the sight of a makeshift cockroach nest constructed within the machine. It was a horrifying sight, and they quickly disposed of the infested appliance. Chapter 6. The Haunting. Despite getting rid of the coffee maker, Emma and Sarah's troubles were far from over. Cockroaches began appearing all over Emma's kitchen, scuttling out of the cracks in the walls and crawling on her countertops. She tried various methods to eliminate the pests, but nothing seemed to work. As days turned into weeks, the infestation escalated. Emma's once pristine home now resembled a scene from a horror movie. The relentless insects invaded every corner, and she was forced to sleep with the lights on to avoid the unsettling sensation of cockroaches crawling on her at night. Chapter 7. Desperation. Emma's life had become a living nightmare. She was consumed by paranoia and fear, unable to escape the relentless onslaught of cockroaches. Desperate for help, she reached out to a pest control company, but even their efforts proved futile. The cockroaches seemed to multiply faster than they could be exterminated. One evening, as Emma sat in her dimly lit living room, she received an email from an unknown address. coffeesupply99@gmail.com. The message contained only a cryptic sentence: "You cannot escape what you have awakened." Chapter 8. The Revelation. Terrified and exhausted, Emma shared the strange email with Sarah, who immediately recognized the email address as the same one Alan had used when selling her the cursed Keurig. They delved deeper into Alan's online presence and discovered that he had a history of bizarre and unsettling transactions involving coffee-related items. Their research led them to a disturbing legend associated with the old, abandoned house where Emma had purchased the Keurig. According to local tales, the house had once been owned by a coffee-obsessed recluse who dabbled in dark rituals involving cockroaches. Chapter 9. The Final Confrontation. Determined to break the curse and put an end to their torment, Emma and Sarah decided to investigate the abandoned house. Armed with flashlights, they ventured into the eerie darkness that surrounded the decaying structure. Inside, they discovered a hidden chamber covered in symbols and strange drawings. As they approached the heart of the chamber, a chilling sensation washed over them. In the center of the room, surrounded by candles and a swarm of cockroaches, was a grotesque effigy of a man, crudely fashioned from coffee grounds and cockroach shells. The air grew colder, and the room filled with an otherworldly presence. A voice, neither human nor animal, echoed through the chamber, speaking the words of an ancient incantation. The room seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy. Chapter 10. Breaking the Curse. With sheer determination, Emma and Sarah fought through their fear. They knew that they had to destroy the effigy to break the curse. Armed with a makeshift torch, they set the vile creation ablaze. As the flames consumed the nightmarish figure, the air grew still, and the cockroaches scattered in all directions. With a final burst of fiery intensity, the effigy crumbled into ash, and the dark presence that had haunted them began to dissipate. Exhausted but victorious, Emma and Sarah emerged from the abandoned house, knowing that they had put an end to the horrors that had plagued their lives. Chapter 11. A New Beginning. In the days that followed, Emma and Sarah cleaned every inch of Emma's home, ensuring that no trace of the cursed coffee maker remained. The cockroaches had vanished, and the sense of dread that had once enveloped them began to lift. As the weeks turned into months, Emma and Sarah's friendship grew stronger. They shared the unbelievable story of the Keurig roasting roaches with their friends and family, ensuring that no one else would fall victim to the curse. But the memory of that fateful CraigsList transaction would forever linger, a chilling reminder that sometimes the price of a bargain could be far greater than one could ever imagine. Chapter 12. The Lingering Fear. Despite the passing of time and the return of relative normalcy, Emma and Sarah could never quite shake the lingering fear that the events of that dreadful CraigsList transaction had left behind. They often found themselves waking up in the middle of the night, drenched in cold sweat, reliving the horrors they had faced. Emma had developed a newfound aversion to coffee, unable to enjoy her once beloved beverage without being haunted by memories of cockroaches. Sarah, too, had nightmares of the grotesque effigy and the eerie incantation that had resonated through that cursed chamber. Chapter 13. The Warning. One day, as Emma and Sarah were enjoying a peaceful afternoon in Emma's newly renovated kitchen, they received an unexpected visitor. It was an elderly woman named Mrs. Hawthorne, a longtime resident of Willowbrook. She had heard about their ordeal and felt compelled to share a warning. "Children," Mrs. Hawthorne said with a grave expression, "you've faced something ancient and malevolent, something that should have remained undisturbed. The curse may be lifted, but the darkness it unleashed lingers." She continued, "Be vigilant, for there are forces beyond our understanding, and they are drawn to those who meddle with their secrets. The Keurig was just a vessel for something far older and darker." Chapter 14. A Cursed Legacy. As the days passed, Emma and Sarah began to research the history of the cursed coffee maker and the sinister rituals tied to it. They discovered a trail of strange occurrences and misfortune that had followed the Keurig's previous owners, all of whom had purchased it through CraigsList. The two friends were determined to put an end to the cycle of suffering. They embarked on a mission to track down every person who had owned the cursed Keurig before them, hoping to break the chain of torment once and for all. Chapter 15. The Final Confrontation. Their journey led them to the doorstep of a man named Samuel, the first known owner of the cursed Keurig. Samuel had moved away from Willowbrook years ago and now lived in a remote cabin deep in the woods. When Emma and Sarah arrived at his secluded residence, they were greeted by a sense of foreboding. Samuel, an elderly man with a haunted look in his eyes, admitted to his role in the curse's creation. He revealed that he had been a member of a secretive, coffee-obsessed cult that had performed dark rituals to achieve coffee perfection. The curse had been unleashed as a result of their insatiable desire for the perfect cup of coffee. Together, Emma, Sarah, and Samuel embarked on a perilous journey to reverse the curse. They revisited the abandoned house, reconstructed the effigy, and performed a counter-ritual to imprison the malevolent forces that had plagued them. The chamber quaked with supernatural fury as they battled against the darkness. Chapter 16. The Sacrifice. As the ritual reached its climax, a sacrifice was demanded. Samuel, the one who had initially ignited the curse, volunteered to offer himself as atonement. With tears in his eyes, he stepped into the center of the chamber, his body transformed into a vessel of anguish. The room was engulfed in a blinding light, and the malevolent presence that had haunted Emma and Sarah was drawn into Samuel's willing sacrifice. With a final, agonized cry, he crumbled into a pile of ash. just as the effigy had before. Chapter 17. Closure. With the curse finally vanquished and Samuel's sacrifice complete, Emma and Sarah emerged from the abandoned house, forever changed by their harrowing experience. The haunting sense of dread that had clung to them for so long began to dissipate, replaced by a newfound sense of closure. They returned to Willowbrook as heroes, having broken the cycle of suffering that had plagued their town for years. The community celebrated their bravery and thanked them for their selflessness. Chapter 18. A New Normal. As time passed, Emma and Sarah found solace in their friendship, knowing that they had faced unimaginable horrors and emerged stronger together. They slowly rebuilt their lives, embracing a newfound appreciation for each other and the simple joys of life. The memory of the Keurig roasting roaches remained a dark chapter in their lives, a cautionary tale of the dangers that could lurk behind seemingly innocent CraigsList transactions. They vowed never to let their guard down again, always mindful of the price that could be paid for a tempting bargain. The town of Willowbrook returned to peace and tranquility, but the legend of the cursed Keurig and the courageous friends who had confronted it lived on. A chilling reminder that some secrets should remain undisturbed, and that sometimes the pursuit of perfection can come at a terrible cost.